Ladies and gentlemen, today I got the keys to this little go-kart on steroids. Ladies and gentlemen, we got the keys to a 2022 Chevy Spark. Nothing fancy, very basic car, and honestly one of the smaller cars I've driven in my entire life. Not the smallest thing, but close second. The smallest would be the Mitsubishi Mirage. But some quick specs about this one. It's going to be powered by a 1.4 liter inline-4 front-wheel drive CVT transmission, pushing a whooping 98 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque. Again, front-wheel drive, and it's basically a tiny little hatchback, one of the cheapest cars you can buy. I'm pretty sure the MSRP right now is at least for $14,000. So if you have 14K sitting around, you can buy yourself a tiny little beater-ish. I wouldn't recommend driving this in the snow since it is front-wheel drive and barely weighs anything. But let's hop inside. Trunk space for a hatchback, it's pretty decent, and for the price tag, it's okay. We have 4 speakers, so our music system is honestly not going to be the greatest. Our suspension is standard. We have a backup camera, and this is where our door handle is back here. Cloth seats all around, little cup holders. So yes, it is a 4-seater, not a 5-seater. This thing's a 4-seater. Hopping to the front where everything kind of nice happens. Foot on the brake. There we go. Very basic. Our traction control is down here. We have our light controls. We have a tiny little, less than 6 inches of screen. It does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's a big thing. We have our OnStar services over here with our SOS and voices. Cruise control, volume, changing out your screen, like very basic stuff. And yeah, if you want to edit your partially digital gauge cluster, you use your signals to switch around stuff. Not bad. Again, like I said, go-kart on steroids. If you took out this engine and put it in an actual legit go-kart, you'd have one of the quickest go-karts on the planet, or maybe an average powered go-kart. But right now, as I'm driving this thing, I realize maybe size does kind of matter to some degree, because something this small doesn't feel adequate enough for the road, especially since we're up here in Canada where everybody has a spare truck somewhere out here. A lot of people have trucks. So when I pull up beside a truck, I feel very inadequate sometimes. But if you're not as insecure as me and you are pretty much well stable in yourself, you're pretty self-confident, you don't really mind that. You just want to get from point A to point B. This car is basically that. It's a point A to point B car. And if you look at our mirror, yeah, we have a tiny mirror over here as well. Handling and cornering wise, it's actually pretty nimble. The turning radius is really good. Again, we have a tiny car, and 0 to 60 gets there in 4 to 5 business days roughly. We don't have anything fancy. They didn't put anything performance-wise in this car. We don't even have a sport mode. We have a lower levels mode, so we can kind of step on it. Not bad. It will get you up to highway speeds decently quick. Well, not decently quick, but it will get you there eventually. And since it's a nice foggy day out here today, and with a silver/white car, they're not gonna see us coming, man. They're just gonna see the tiniest little fog lights pulling up to them menacingly. And honestly, I don't mind that. I don't mind it at all. And we do have our handbrake in case you want to drift, which I'm really not gonna try and end up in a curb. But since we're in an empty-ish stretch of road, we're gonna try and do a quick little acceleration test. 3, 2, 1. Nah. Felt like the car was gonna literally rattle itself into oblivion. No. Don't use this car for 0 to 60 tests. Don't use this car for anything related to speed, because right now we're going like 70. I'm hearing so much road noise. I feel everything on the road. I am connected with the car to the point where anything on the road, I can anticipate how the car is gonna react. Is it predictable enough? Yes, this car is pretty predictable. Do we have any safety features? No. We don't have blind spot monitoring, we don't have adaptive cruise control, we don't have lane keep assist. We have essentially the basics, and I can see why this car is, I don't want to say cheap, I want to say affordable, essentially. Because for a car like this, to get to this point where it's basically $14,000 brand spanking new, they had to cut some corners somewhere, essentially, to the point where it begs you to ask the question, for this side kind of a full affordability, is the car even worth it, or is it worth getting something a little bit more, like let's say a Toyota Corolla, hatchback Toyota Corolla with more than 4 speakers. This is basically the definition of a beater car. Nothing fancy, absolutely nothing fancy. Get you from point A to point B. And for those wondering, let's hear what our radio sounds like. We're listening to, I don't know.
Enjoy the 1.5 liter VC turbo engine for a perfect balance of power and efficiency.
Radio actually sounds pretty decent. They must have gotten some better speakers or something, because damn, it's not underwhelming for the price range. I expected all of this to be happening. So the biggest strong point of this car is not its performance, it's not its luxury, it's not the way it drives, it's the gas mileage. It takes literally less than 50 bucks to fill up this tank to a complete tank, and right now we are literally running on almost empty, quarter tank. Actually, we have 100 kilometers in here, which is actually not bad. If I stopped driving like a maniac for 30 minutes, we would have a very, very good gas average actually. But since we're driving the way I drive, the gas mileage wouldn't be the greatest. But that's literally this car's strongest point. The gas mileage is what makes people buy this car. Gets you from point A to point B, decent enough space for your 2 kids in the back, nothing else. Basically, that's what this car is meant for. Alright, so apparently the proper term to name these cars is probably K cars. K-E-I, K cars. Apparently it's a big thing in Europe too, having cars with tremendously low horsepower numbers, front wheel drive, and basically designed to get you from point A to point B, which would make sense in Europe. They have tinier roads there. They don't have as much roads and the need for cars as much as we do. They have better transportation, better transit system, better railroads, etc, etc. Here, K cars really don't exist. We don't want them here. Well, usually nobody really buys them except for someone's grandma, somebody's kid who's learning how to drive, or somebody's first car. Nobody else with like a big family, or who has to carry a lot of stuff, and a lot of people have the time, or the combination of the two, who has to carry people and stuff, ever really gets cars like these. These cars are just, the market for these cars here is pretty small, I'm not gonna lie. And I live on top of a hill. I'm not fancy or anything, but I live on top of a hill. A front wheel drive car without as much power to get me up there in the winter is scary, to be honest. It's terrifying sometimes. But a little car like this should be like a fun little, I wouldn't say summer car, but a little car just for, why the hell not? Your kid wants to go somewhere here, take the Spark, enjoy yourself, have fun with your friends, don't get into too much trouble, because you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna make their own fun, and they're gonna be using this handbrake, just yanking it up all the time. That's what they're gonna be doing. But let's put into lower modes, into a somewhat sportier setting, and try it off. Try a couple more acceleration, try a little pulls, give you guys the full experience of this beautiful stock exhaust. Open up the windows to let the volume seep in. We're gonna launch when the light turns green. Activating launch control. This car doesn't have launch control. I'm actually just pulling your guys' leg. This car, another Spark. Can't tell it, I think that's the older version, but still, we're gonna try and accelerate as best as we could. And lift up, we hit 80. I hope you guys enjoyed those nice exhaust notes I have for you guys. Apparently I cannot downshift myself since it is still a CVT and there's actually no way to downshift it, but and we're going uphill now. Damn. There's absolutely nothing sporty about this car, and maybe if you want to upgrade it, maybe you can slap a turbo if you're crazy enough to slap a turbo on a car like this. Kudos to you, but for me, this will be enough for a good first car. This is honestly a perfect first car. 98 horsepower is not getting anyone in trouble. You're not gonna get in trouble with this kind of car. But anyway, back to the longer form of this video. Okay, so essentially the back seats, they're basically meant for your kids when they're young, not when they're older. If your kids ever become taller than 5'5", they're not fitting back there, especially if you're like a full-grown adult sitting in front here. That would not work. Our visibility in this thing is actually really good. I can see almost, let me come to a complete stop first, a full 360 of this thing. It's actually wild. Very good visibility in this thing. And since our hood is pretty tiny, like, I can squeeze this thing almost anywhere essentially. So again, let's run through the basics. This thing is meant for either somebody who's single, somebody who has very small kids, or somebody who just wants a car to get from point A to point B and doesn't care about literally anything else. That is what this car is meant for. But overall, I can't really hate it. For the price tag, 14 grand, it's really, really good. I gotta step on it so that I can accelerate somewhat consistently with the cars in front of me. Like, all of that engine screaming got us to just above 50 kilometers an hour. Again, 98 horsepower, man. What'd you guys expect? I would have to say though, this is leagues better than the Mitsubishi Mirage, because that car was just no, I could not deal with that car. I'm so glad they gave this car at least close to 100 horsepower somewhat. CVT transmission makes sense. You don't really want a big transmission weighing this car down. CVT probably makes more sense. For a tiny little car like this, it's honestly not bad. It's honestly not too bad. But anyway guys, this has been Morty in the 2022 Chevy Spark. Take care of yourselves and peace. Brake check? Nah, we're good.